Hi English I Puppies, this is Mrs. Prell to walk you through how to develop ideas that explicitly connect back to the thesis. So we're going to take some guided notes and then we're going to go in with our highlighters to kind of analyze what we've written. You should have 4 different colors of either highlighters or crayons in front of you and a pencil or pen in hand so that you could take good notes. The thesis statement that we're going to be creating is based on the prompt that you wrote on Monday. So that prompt is write an essay explaining why it is important to honor a commitment. All right, so for our thesis statement, we're going to reword the prompt and then we're going to include our reason, our opinion or stance, our why. So we're going to say it is important to honor a commitment because other people depend on you to keep your word. This is a potential answer to that question, why is it important to honor a commitment, that you could have come up with in your brainstorming. For our 2 examples, I'm going to use Of Mice and Men. My first example always has to be from a book or literature. And for my second example, I'm going to use Lilo and Stitch. Your second example can be from another book, it can be from a movie or pop culture. So my first reason, and I have to answer this question tied to my thesis statement, is that George honors his commitment to protect Lenny from harm. So I'm being specific about what his commitment was. And I'm going to say by preventing Lenny from dying a horrible death. Even though George does shoot Lenny in the end, he does it out of mercy and in an effort to protect Lenny instead of Curly's wife getting to him, or Curly getting to him. All right, reason 2 for Lilo and Stitch. Lilo honors her commitment, so again I use those key words from the prompt, to never leave a family member behind by advocating for her sister to keep Stitch. Now before I go any further, I'm going to go in with my highlighters. And every time I see keywords from the prompt, I'm going to highlight in yellow. So this idea of repeating this language, it is important to honor a commitment. I'm going to highlight that in yellow whenever I use that exact terminology from the prompt. So of course I use it in my thesis. It is important to honor a commitment. I use it again in my first reason. Honors his commitment. And I say Lilo honors her commitment. This is how I get a higher score on that essay, by repeating that language. Now for my why, or my answer, I'm going to use like a reddish orange color. So I need to provide my why, and I do that here in my thesis. Why is it important to honor a commitment? Well, because other people depend on you to keep your word. So that's my why. And then I can go in and see my why in my 2 examples. So by, this is how this is done, preventing Lenny from dying a horrible death. This ties to my why. By advocating for her sister to keep Stitch. I get even more specific with a detail that I will highlight in green when I say what the specific commitment was. So what was the commitment? Well, it's the commitment to protect Lenny from harm. What was the commitment Lilo made? Well, it was to never leave a family member behind. And lastly, I'm going to go in with my blue, and anywhere I give character names or specific examples, I'm going to highlight that in blue. So here I talk about George, and here I talk about Lilo. So in each of my reasons, this would be body paragraph number 1 and body paragraph number 2, I repeat this honors the commitment to tie to my thesis and tie to my prompt. Then I give my why in my thesis. Well, other people depend on you to keep your word. And I give this why. He kept his commitment to prevent Lenny from dying a horrible death. Then I put my why in my second example. Well, how did Lilo keep her commitment? Well, by advocating for her sister to keep Stitch. And I get even more specific. I don't leave my reader hanging by telling them what the specific commitment was. So this commitment is to protect Lenny from harm. This commitment is to never leave a family member behind. And then, of course, I have my blue, which is my characters specific to my examples. Let's move on to our conclusion. So this is where I sum up. It can be through synthesis. If you want to get creative, you can use a metaphor or simile. I just tied this with the word like in my conclusion. It is important to honor a commitment because other people, like Lenny and Stitch, depend on people like George and Lilo to keep their word. So going in, keeping that language of it is important to honor a commitment. I say it again in my conclusion. It is important to honor a commitment. I tie to my reason why, because, right, people depend on other people to keep their word. And then I give my specific 2 examples. So I sum up the characters I used for reason 1 and the characters I used for reason 2. So Lenny and Stitch and George and Lilo. And this helps tie together my point. Now I'm going to take all of this information and I'm going to write like a baby essay down here at the bottom. So step 1, I just repeated the thesis. And again, I'm going to go in and highlight. I use the same language. It is important to honor a commitment. And then I include my answer to the question, why is it important to honor a commitment? Well, because other people depend on you to keep your word. We're going to fill in our reason 1 right here in our number 2. So right as I write. We're going to say George honors his commitment to protect Lenny from harm by preventing Lenny from dying a horrible death. So this would almost be like the topic sentence of my first body paragraph after I introduce Of Mice and Men. So don't forget your lead-in, right? In the novel Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, the character George looks out for the character Lenny. And then you would go into your topic sentence. George honors his commitment to protect Lenny from harm by preventing Lenny from dying a horrible death. So again, I've got this repetition of honors his commitment. I get specific with my language. So what commitment? I'm going to highlight this in green. Well, his commitment to protect Lenny from harm. Then I see my why, by preventing Lenny from dying a horrible death. And of course, I've got my character here at the top that I'm including. All right. Our topic sentence for our second body paragraph, we see Lilo. Repeat that language of honors her commitment. What is her commitment? Well, her commitment is specifically to never leave a family member behind. And then how does she honor it? by advocating for her big sister to keep Stitch as a pet. And same highlights for my conclusion. If this seems repetitive, that's because it is. We keep tying back to our thesis to make this explicitly clear for our reader. So it is important to honor a commitment. Those are our keywords from the prompt. Because other people depend on you to keep your word. That's our why. Now we can say, Lenny depended on George to keep his word and protect him from any harm. And Stitch depended on Lilo to keep her word and include him in the family. So we've got this specific example. Lenny depended on George. Stitch depended on Lilo. We've got the commitment that they kept to protect him from any harm, this commitment to include him in the family, but most importantly, we have our why, to keep his word, to keep her word. All right, your rainbow paper is complete. You can see we were consistent throughout our essay, continuing to reference that prompt, that honor a commitment, which is our key words, and then our reason that we brainstorm for why, because other people depend on you to keep your word. Throughout, we gave specifics as to what the commitment was that the characters had made. We gave the why the character had made the commitment, and we used those keywords and a specific character, a specific example. All right, flip your page to page 7. You are about to try this on your own. You have 3 different options. You may want to use your essay that you wrote for Of Mice and Men and edit your essay by thinking through how you can connect constantly back to that Of Mice and Men essay prompt. Or you can use the essay about commitment that we wrote on Monday. Or lastly, if you do not have your essays available to you, you can flip all the way back to the end of your packet. Take a look at the prompt for today's essay. Write an essay explaining whether failure can strengthen a person, and write on that prompt. No matter what prompt you choose, just be sure to write it at the top of your page so that your teacher knows what prompt you are writing on. It's been a pleasure spending this time with you. Good luck as you go through. Don't forget that after you do your writing, you should highlight your paper the same way that we did in the model. If you need a refresher course, after writing your examples, watch this video again. Thanks.